Hello students, welcome to the daily news analysis. I hope you all are doing good. I'm your educator Prithviraj Singh and I'll be giving you the analysis about the Hindu newspaper of 10th of February 2022. Let us begin with some important news articles. The first important news article that you can see on the screen: no cabinet minister questions, and it is being said by Congress. No cabinet minister took questions, right? Guys, in order to check the executive, there are some mechanisms available with legislature, and this in turn puts a check and control over the executive. We all know, guys, that there are three organs of the state: legislature, executive, and judiciary, right? So there is a separation of powers. Separation of powers means you have a separate organ of the state which legislates or makes laws, a organ which adjudicates, of which you all are going to be part very soon, the judiciary, and executive implements, right, or executes. So the three functions of the state are being separated into legislature, executive, and judiciary, right? And that is the reason why it is also called as Trinity of state, right? Tridev: legislature, executive, and judiciary, right? Now the separation of powers comes with the concept of system of check and balances. So legislature exercises control over executive, judiciary exercises control over executive and the legislature by declaring any law passed by the legislature as unconstitutional, ultra vires, or by declaring any action of the executive as unjust, unfair, and unreasonable, right? So there is a system of check and balances, right? And this ensures that the government is not absolute, and it also protects the tyranny of executive, correct? So the system of check and balances, which puts a limit on the government, right, is also called as constitutionalism. Now constitutionalism means you have the limited government under higher law. That means the government or the executive is limited, is restricted, under a higher law, right? And this is called as constitutionalism. Now, as I said, that legislature puts a check and control over the executive, and there are various mechanisms, students, available with the legislature, which in turn ensures that the executive do not overjump its domain, right? And many instruments are there, like the parliamentary control, wherein one mechanism is called as question hour. Then there are various parliamentary committees also, which puts a check and control over the executive. For example, Public Accounts Committee, Estimates Committee, so on and so forth, right? So this article basically talks about the question hour. The question hour, right? That means the parliament or the state legislature, asks the questions from the executives, right? Or ask the question from the ministers, and the minister usually respond the questions which are being raised by any member of parliament of the definitely the parliament, either of the house of the parliament, Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, or the state legislature, right? So this article talks about the question hour. Now guys, the first hour of the parliamentary proceeding, right? So the first hour of the parliamentary sitting is dedicated to question hour, right? Let's say let's assume that the parliament starts its session at 11 a.m. in the morning, right? So the first hour, 11 to 12 a.m., 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., the first hour of the parliamentary sitting would be dedicated to question hour. And here the members of the parliament, the opposition members, they would be asking the questions from usually the ministers and in this way they keeps the executive under check and control. I hope it is clear, right? So the whip of the Congress, Jairam Ramesh, he was saying that it is for the first time in the history of Rajya Sabha that the cabinet ministers did not respond to the questions which are being raised by the opposition members, right? Now let us understand the question hour in this background. Now, as I said, that question hour is the first hour dedicated in the parliament or in the state legislature where the members of opposition ask questions to the ministers, right? And it is their right. And question hour, guys, is not mentioned in the constitution, right? So constitution do not talk about the question hour, and it is not also being mentioned in any act of the parliament. It is mentioned in the rules of house, right? Rules of house. Are you getting? So rules of the procedure and conduct of business in the houses, right? So the rules of house, you will find the mention of question hour, correct? Rules of house. So one thing has to be very, very clear, that question hour do not find it there mentioned in the constitution. Mind you guys, it has been asked in the examination many a times that is it a constitutional tool or is it a statutory tool? Statutory means something which is being passed by the parliament or by the legislature. So it is not something which is mentioned in any act of the parliament, neither it is being mentioned in the constitution, right? So it is non-constitutional, non-statutory. However, it is being mentioned in the rules of the house, right? So the rules of the house of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha talks about the question hour, right? I hope it is clear. Very important, and expect a question on this. So as you can see, Rajya Sabha's question hour in Rajya Sabha is being governed by rule number 47 till 50 of the rules of procedure and conduct of business in the Council of States, the other name for Rajya Sabha, right? Now, question hour in both houses is held on all days of the session, but there are 2 days when the exception is being made, right? Normally, there is no such restriction over the question hour. It can be, asked by the members of opposition on any day, in the week, whenever the parliament is in session, except for 2 instances. The first is when, the President of India is addressing the joint session of the parliament. That means the joint session of the parliament, when both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, sit together at Central Assembly Hall, right? So joint session of the parliament and the presidential address. So presidential address is mentioned under Article 87, Clause 1 of the Constitution. Very important, students, President address. Now, President addresses the parliament on 2 occasions. Number 1, the first session of the newly constituted Lok Sabha, right? So whenever the elections for Lok Sabha are being held and whenever the new Lok Sabha, sits for its session, the first session of the Lok Sabha would be addressed by the President, right? So that is the first instance, correct? So the first session of newly constituted Lok Sabha, correct? So both the houses would be called, right? And newly constituted Lok Sabha means the elections for the Lok Sabha were being held and the new Lok Sabha has been constituted, right? So both the houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, would be called at Central Hall, and the President would address the joint session, right? It is called a joint session. Mind you, joint session is different from joint sitting, guys. Joint sitting is something to resolve the deadlock in the parliament, right? To resolve the disagreement between the 2 houses over any bill in the parliament, right? And it is mentioned under Article 108. So don't get confused yourself when I say joint session. Joint sitting, students, is mentioned under Article 108, correct? Whereas joint session as a word do not find its mention in the Constitution, but when both the houses of the parliament are being assembled together, Lok Sabha plus Rajya Sabha, and in the presidential address, right, when the newly constituted Lok Sabha conducts its first session, right, and it would be addressed by the President under Article 87, Clause 1, right? The second instance of where the president, gives his address to both the houses sitting together is the first session of every year. And guys, you all know that the first session of every year is your budget session, right? So we know that Parliament has 3 sessions in a year: budget session, monsoon session, and winter session, right? So the first session of the Parliament is called as budget session, and it starts with 1st of February. Nowadays it is being started with on 1st of February, right? Every year. So the first session of every year also called as the budget session, because the budget for the next year is being presented during this session, right? So you might have, if you're going through the newspaper, you would have come across the news that president has given his address, for both the houses of the Parliament assembled together, to mark the beginning of the budget session, right? So he would come and say that these are the policies of my government. My government had done this and that. My government has launched the programs for the development of the country, for the growth of the country, So the presidential address is in 2 occasions: the first session of the newly constituted Lok Sabha and the first session of every year. Correct. So when these are happening, when there is a presidential address, the question hour cannot be, used. So the tool question hour cannot be used during the presidential address, and definitely because this is a time where the president is addressing the Parliament. So therefore, the logic says that the questions must not be raised against the ministers, right? Second instance where the questionnaire cannot be used is, when the finance minister presents the budget. So you must have seen that when the minister of finance is presenting the budget, no question can be, put forth, or the question hour cannot be used when the finance minister is, presenting the budget. So in these 2 occasions, question hour cannot be used, right? I hope it is clear, right? And very important, the presiding officers of both the houses. The presiding officer of Lok Sabha is Speaker, and that of Rajya Sabha is Chairperson of Rajya Sabha, which is actually the Vice President of the country, right? So are the final authority with respect to the conduct of question hour, right? So any decision with regard to the question hour is to be taken up by the the presiding officers of the respective houses. Normally it goes like this: once a question that fulfills the conditions of admissibility is received, the secretariat sends it to the ministry concerned, and once the facts are received from the ministry, the questions is further examined for admissibility, right? And a final list of questions is circulated to ministers, on the basis of which they frame their answers, right? So now moving ahead, now guys, I expect that a question may be asked on the types of questions, right? So there are basically 4 types of questions. The first category is called as starred questions. Guys, in starred question, as the name suggests, starred question. In a starred question is generally marked with an asterisk, right? Right, an asterisk is being mentioned. For the starred questions, you have an asterisk mentioned, correct? Starred questions are being asked orally, and the reply is also, has to come orally, right? So that means a verbal reply is, from the minister is expected, right? So the members would be asking oral questions, and an oral answer is expected from the minister. That means the members of opposition would be asking the questions orally, right, over any policy of the government, etc. And it is expected that the answer or the response or the reply must also come orally, right? So such a question is distinguished by member of parliament with an asterisk, and the answer can also be followed by supplementary question, right? Now very, very important guys, the supplementary question may follow. For example, if I ask you the question, how is your preparation going? You will say, sir, it's going on track. Or you may say that, sir, it's not going appropriate as on expected lines. So then definitely on your response, I would ask a supplementary question, right? Because replies or responses or answers are always open-ended, Are you getting? So when you reply or respond, I may ask a supplementary question that, oh, why it is not going on track? What are the loopholes, right? Where is your strategy going, wrong? So I may ask a supplementary question, or the supplementary questions may follow the start questions, right? So I hope it is clear. The start questions are those questions which are being asked orally, and an oral answer is being expected. Number one. Number two, the supplementary questions may also follow, right? So that means, for example, the member of opposition asking question from the minister, and over the response of the minister, a supplementary question is being followed by the member of opposition, right? Number one. Number two, there is a limit on the start questions in a day, and the limit is 20. That means maximum, in order to save the very important crucial time of the parliament, the limit is being kept, and the limit is 20 questions in a day, right? So it cannot go beyond 20 questions. Are you getting? So start questions cannot be more than 20 in a day. Now the next category of questions are called as unstarred questions. Unstarred questions are those questions which are definitely asked orally, but the answer to that is being expected in a written form. Are you getting? So MP seeks a written answer, right? So although they are being asked orally, but because it is unstarred question, and a written answer or a written response is required, right? Correct? And because in written responses you cannot ask the supplementary questions, isn't it? For example, let's say it is a written examination, right? You have to write pen and paper, right? It's a subjective examination, and let's say I give you a question, describe about the powers of the president, right? So you will be writing all the powers, the legislative powers, executive powers, judicial powers, so on and so forth, right? And this is the answer that you have given, right? So can I ask the supplementary question over the written answer? The answer is no, right? Because it is answer, you've written it in written form, right? You have mentioned your answer or response in a written form, therefore a supplementary question can never follow, right? So do a teacher ask a supplementary question, right, over the answer that you have written in the examination? No, right? So when the response is required in written form, a supplementary questions cannot follow. Very, very important. It is different from, and this is how the unstarred questions are distinguished from the starred questions, right? Now there is also a limit over the unstarred question, and this limit is greater than a starred question. Why? Because the written response is required, and written response may not come abruptly, right? It may require time, right? It may need some time, right? So the maximum, at max 230 questions in a day, can be asked as unstarred questions, right? 230 questions can be asked as unstarred questions in a day, right? I hope it is clear. Moving ahead, short notice questions. Guys, short notice questions are generally be those questions which cater to some urgent public issue, right? Some urgent matter of public importance, right? So any matter of urgent public importance, and for such matters, you usually expect a time from the minister to respond. Are you getting? So definitely there are an urgent matter of public importance, and an oral answer is sought, right? So the fact is that it do not require a written answer, and oral answer is being sought. But then short notice means a notice of less than 10 days is prescribed as the minimum period for asking such a question, right? So response must come within 10 days, guys. So this has to be noted upon. A question is being asked orally, and an oral answer is being sought, and it actually caters to some matter of urgent public importance, and the answer has to be given in less than 10 days. Are you getting? So it has to be responded or answered in less than 10 days, right? Short notice questions. Now the fourth category of questions are called as question to private member. Now guys, private member are those members of the parliament which are not the part of the government, right? When I say government, I mean Council of Ministers. We all know, guys, Lok Sabha has 543 MPs and Rajya Sabha has 245 MPs, right? So the total is 788. Are you getting? Now out of 788, there can be only the Council of Ministers, which are the real executive authority. We all know that Council of Ministers are the executive, they are the real executive authority in India, and the ceiling to them is that the number must not exceed 15% of the total strength of Lok Sabha, and total strength of Lok Sabha is 543, right? So that means it comes to around 82 MPs. Are you getting? So the Council of Ministers are 15% of the total strength of Lok Sabha, or 15% of 543. So 15% of 543 is 82 MPs, right? So there is a limit being put over Council of Ministers, and it is 82, right? So, and these are called as the real executive authorities, real executive authority or the executive, because they are the one who are, you know, involved in the implementation or execution of the policies or the laws formed by the legislature. Are you getting? So any member which is not among these 82, or any member who is not the Council of Ministers, right? Are you getting? He or she may be from the ruling party, but the point is that he or she must not be the member of Council of Ministers, right? So any member who is not the Council of Ministers, see guys, in order to form the government, you have to have half of 543, and half of 543 is 272, right? But we know that there are only 82 Council of Ministers. So that means all the 272, they may be able to form, they may be the part of the ruling party or the majority party. But all the 272 are not the executives, right? It is only 82 out of 788, because you may have ministers from Rajya Sabha also, right? So 82 out of 788 are the Council of Ministers, and they are the real executive authority, right? So any member who is not among the Council of Ministers, or any member who is not among 82, would be called as private member, right? So any member who is not Council of Minister, or who is not a part of the Council of Minister, is called as private member. He may be from the ruling party or from the opposition, it doesn't matter, because all members of the ruling party are not the Council of Ministers. I hope it is clear, right? Now, any question which is being asked to the private member is called as question to private member, and a question can be addressed to a private member under, and there is a rule also being mentioned, as you can see, under Rule 40 of Lok Sabha's Rule of Procedure, right? So Rule 40 can be invoked, you know, from the Lok Sabha book, Rules of Procedure, or under Rule 48 of Rajya Sabha's Rule of Procedure, provided that the question deals with a subject relating to some bill, resolution, or other matter for which that member is responsible, right? So I hope we are clear with what is private member and how it is different from the Council of Ministers, and private member may come from the ruling party or from the opposition, right? So any question which is being, you know, directed to a private member is called as the question to private member. Now moving ahead, so in Rajya Sabha, among various norms, the question shall be pointed, specific, and confined to one issue only. It is not that you club many issues together and, you know, then you project a question, or then you fire a question. So it should be catering to one issue only, right? So it is being mentioned in the rules of the House, and it shall not contain arguments, you know, inferences, ironical expressions, you know, defamatory statements, imputations, so on and so forth. Correct. So in Lok Sabha, guys, questions that are not admitted, which are not admitted, include those that are repetitive, right? So the question must not be repetitive. It should be, you know, a new issue, right? Or have been answered previously, and matters that are pending for judgment. So matters which are sub judice in the courts. So matters which are pending, right, or sub judice. Sub judice means over which the judgment is yet to come, over, for example, the hijab controversy, right? So the matter is sub judice in the Karnataka High Court, right? So the member of opposition cannot raise question in question hour with regard to hijab issue. Are you getting? So it cannot be used over any matter which is pending for judgment before any court of law or under consideration before a parliamentary committee, right? Even if any issue is being under consideration of the parliamentary committee, let's say PSC is examining any issue, or let's say estimates committee is examining an issue, or committee on public undertakings is examining any issue. So over those issues where the decision is pending in the parliamentary committee, those questions must also not be raised in the Lok Sabha, right? I hope we are clear with the question hour, very important tool of parliamentary control over executive. Let's move ahead, guys, to the next news, right? So students, as you can see on the screen, the news from the Hindu newspaper today: judges must not be swayed in favor of death penalty. Now guys, this article basically talks about whether we should have death penalty or not, and it actually talks about the evolution of the principles of Phenology. Guys, if I take the data of 2018, or more than 98 countries have banned death penalty, right? Now they are saying that definitely death penalty is being given in for the deterrence of crime, so that the crime do not take place in the society. That means more the gravity of crime and more severity of the punishment, right? But then at the same time, they are saying that it must balance the principles, it must balance the human life, right? It must preserve the human life also, right? And unless it is very much it is inevitable, it is termination should be done, right? So therefore it talks about the death penalty. And guys, we all would be knowing that death penalty definitely is the highest punishment, although the president has the power to actually give mercy to the death penalty of the convict under the mercy petition. So under the pardoning powers mentioned under Article 72 of the Constitution, the president can issue the pardon powers. The president has pardoning powers, pardon powers, where the death sentence can be commuted. Death sentence can be commuted to life imprisonment through commutation, right? One such pardon power, that means the nature of the character of the punishment is being changed. Then you have pardon power. I'll not go into all the powers. I'm just briefing you about the powers which are related to death sentence, right? In pardon powers, the convict is being set free. That means he's being set free from the jail, and all his punishments are being absolved. All his punishments, his guilt are being absolved, and the person is set free. So this is how the president uses his pardoning powers under Article 72, right? Now so the article talks about the death penalty and should we have it, right? Now guys, the judgment in the Supreme Court referred to the evolution of the principles of Phenology, right? So they are saying that now in modern times the principles of Phenology have evolved, and there must be a balance between capital punishment serving as a deterrent to the crime and the preservation of human life, right? So the courts must also strike a balance between the capital punishment which serve as a deterrent and preservation of human life. Are you getting? Unless termination is unavoidable, inevitable, and to serve the other societal causes and collective conscience of society. Now by collective conscience we mean that any incident or any offense or crime which has shook the conscience of the society. For example, let's say any terror attack or any gang rape, right? Let's say Delhi gang rape of 2012, right? Which shook the conscience of the society. For such incidents for such offenses, definitely death sentence, option of death sentence or death penalty may be explored. But until and unless it is not inevitable or something which is unavoidable, one must strike a balance between giving capital punishment which serve as a deterrent to crime in the society and the preservation of the human life, right? So guys, many countries, many advanced countries like US, etc., they did have given up the provision of death penalty. Now how should the courts decide on capital punishment impositions, right? Now guys, there have been many Supreme Court cases and we'll explore them in order to understand this issue. Now guys, in Bachchan Singh case of 1980, the courts formulated a sentencing framework to be followed for imposing death penalty, and it required that the weighing of aggravating and mitigating circumstances. Aggravating means those circumstances which aggravate, aggravate means which are which are very high, which outweigh the mitigating circumstances, right? For a case to be eligible for death sentence, the aggravating circumstances must outweigh the mitigating circumstances. Are you getting? So in this sense, aggravating circumstances means whether the crime is of very high gravity and the offense has to and the capital punishment is inevitable because it is a grave offense. The death penalty or death sentence is inevitable, and the aggravating circumstances are outweighing the mitigating circumstances. Mitigating circumstances lead you more towards the preservation of human life, right? Preservation of human life, right? So if the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances, then Supreme Court said in Bachchan Singh case, if this happens, then the death sentence can be imposed or can be given, or the death penalty can be imposed, right? I repeat again guys, Supreme Court in the year 1980 in Bachchan Singh case cleared and gave a framework to be followed for imposing death penalty, and they said that if the aggravating circumstances outweigh or outnumber the mitigating circumstances, means if the gravity of the crime is very high and the offense is so grave that it outweighs any mitigating circumstances of any relaxation, then the death penalty must be imposed. I hope it is clear. Now moving ahead, what is collective conscience? Now collective consciousness, also sometimes called as collective conscience, is a fundamental sociological concept that refers to a set of shared beliefs, right? So for any offense which actually disturbs the social fabric in the society, or which shakes the shared belief and the collective conscience of the society, such cases are called as should be taken up under the collective conscience. Now in order to understand the collective conscience of society as a ground to justify death penalty, it was for the first time used in 1983's judgment of Machi Singh versus State of Punjab, right? So in Machi Singh versus State of Punjab in 1983, the court said that if any offense or any crime has shook the moral compass of the society, or has shook the conscience of the society, right, which has shook the very belief of the society, correct, for such offenses the death penalty must be imposed, right? So when collective conscience of the society is shocked, it will expect the holders to inflict the death penalty, right? And that is the same I would say argument being used in hanging of Afzal Guru, and also the hanging of Delhi gang rape case of 2012, Mukesh versus State of NCT Delhi. So in both these cases the court used the same argument of collective conscience. That means what Afzal Guru, Azmal Kasab, what Delhi gang rape convicts did shook the conscience of the society, and therefore the under Machi Singh versus State of Punjab judgment they must be hanged till death, right? So I believe it is clear, right? Now the thing is that the article is saying that the collective conscience today can be, you know, produced, it can be manufactured, right? Today we have media, you know, and many civil society organizations, right, which may, you know, temper the conscience or the belief of the society. And television and social media, you know, has bombarded us and creating a debt. They today very much determine the opinion in our society, right? So therefore the judiciary must be very, very careful, and they must rule out such, you know, adverse impact being created by the television and the social media over formation of public opinion, right? So collective conscience has to be used very carefully, and any undue influence by the television and media and the social media must be neglected. I hope it is clear. So the need of the hour is that the law cannot rely on or be influenced by any delusionary sense or mood of the people. And guys, even law commission in the year 2015, which was headed by Justice AP Shah, they proposed that the capital punishments must be abolished, right, except only, you know, and they must not be given for the non-terrorism cases, right? So only for the terrorist activities or terrorist cases, you know, the convict should be hanged till death. Otherwise, for the non-terror cases, the capital punishment must not be used, right? According to this commission, India is one among the few countries that still carry out the capital punishments. The other countries, you know, practicing death penalty are Iran, Iraq, Saudi and China, right? So China, Saudi and Iraq and Iran, they still have the death penalty as the highest form of punishment. And as I said that by the end of 2014, more than 98 countries have already abolished the death penalty, right? So I hope it was interesting and it is aptly clear, right? Now moving to the next news. Now India's mRNA vaccine is likely to be out or likely to be, you know, completed by the month of April 2022, right? So many human trials are being conducted over, you know, messenger RNA vaccine, mRNA vaccine, and many volunteers have participated. As you can see, 4,000 volunteers were being recruited for the same, right? And the second or the third trial of the vaccine is undergoing, right? And they believe that it would be completed by the end of April, right? Let us understand what is mRNA vaccine. Now students, mRNA or messenger RNA is, as the name suggests, messenger. That means it gives the messages, you know, to the cell, correct? As you can see, it is a molecule that essentially puts the DNA instructions into the action, right? So messenger RNA puts the DNA instructions into action, right? And very importantly, messenger RNA or mRNA is generally used is a template which builds protein, right? So it is also involved in protein manufacturing, right? So the messenger RNA is a template to build protein, right? Now every virus, guys, have a protein attached, right? Now mRNA vaccines tries to build that protein, and then that protein is being, you know, injected or inoculated in the body, right? So that an immune response is generated in the body, right? The antibodies are being generated, the immune response is being generated, and this is how, if in future such, you know, if you are being infected from the COVID, you know, the body cells would identify the protein which is being inserted, inoculated or injected by mRNA, and would build up their defense mechanism fighting against the foreign invasion, right? So I hope it is clear. I'll repeat again, messenger RNA or mRNA, as the name suggests, it gives the messages, it gives the DNA instructions, you know, into the action, correct? It is also a template to build protein. As I said that every virus has a protein, right? And mRNA vaccine carries that spike protein from the virus, and it's being injected in the body, so that the body, the body cells know that how to fight and how to defend such such infections in the future, right? So mRNA vaccine is basically works on that, and it is very successful, and the recent advantages in molecular biotechnology, you know, are being said to be quicker to manufacture than the older, right? So it is quicker to manufacture than the older one. And in India, the question which can be asked, right, because it is the India's first homegrown mRNA COVID-19 vaccine, right? And it is being developed by the Pune-based Geneva Biopharmaceuticals. Very important. The question might be asked in the examination that India's first homegrown mRNA vaccine is being built by which among the following agencies? It is Genova Biopharmaceuticals, located in Pune, right? And as I just said about the details of the mRNA vaccine and the phases, it's undergoing the second and third trial, and it would be completed by the end of April, right? So guys, you can see that to produce an mRNA vaccine, the scientists produce a synthetic version of the mRNA, right, that a virus uses. So synthetic version of the mRNA that a virus uses is being, you know, produced to build its infections proteins, right? And it's delivered into the human body, whose cells read as instruction to build that viral protein, and therefore create some of the virus's molecules themselves, right? So in this sense, it, you know, generates the immunity in the country against any such foreign invasion, right? Now mRNA is a type of RNA that is necessary for protein production, and mRNA vaccines teach our cells how to make a protein that will, you know, trigger an immune response into our bodies, right? Now guys, mRNA you know, vaccines, basically there are two parts of our immune system. Innate immune system, that means the defenses which we are born with, right? Innate immune system means all those immunities which a baby is born with, right, which a person is born with, right, are called as innate immune system. The second is acquired immune system. Acquired immune system means we acquire from outside. Are you getting? We acquired from when we come in contact with various pathogens, right? So for example, many pathogens are there, many bacteria are there in our gut, right? And the body has acquired an immune system, you know, because of in response to these pathogens, right? So there are two types of immune system: innate, of which you are born with, and acquired means you acquire in the process. So classical vaccine modules usually, you know, only work with acquired immune system, right? So normally the classical vaccine that you have in the market, they work with the acquired immune system, and the innate immune system is activated by another ingredient, right? And that is called as adjuvant. So the innate immune system is activated by another. So because the vaccines that you have in the market, right, for example Covaxin, etc., they work on the acquired immune system, right? But the innate immune system is activated by another ingredient that is called as adjuvant, right? Now interestingly, and this is the reason why mRNA vaccines are successful, because they could also trigger the innate immune system, are you getting, which provides an extra layer of defense without the need to add adjuvants, right? So because we have learned that in order to activate innate immune system, you have to have a adjuvant, right? But mRNA vaccines are, interestingly, you know, can trigger the innate immune system without actually the need of adding any adjuvant, right? So this is how mRNA vaccines are successful, and the company Genova Pharmaceuticals is building, you know, mRNA vaccines, and it would be, you know, launched in the month of April. I hope it is clear. Now moving ahead. Now guys, in today's Hindu, there was also news with regard to Iran's missile program, right? Yesterday or day before, we learned about Iran, you know, manufacturing clandestinely, I would say confidentially, you know, manufacturing the nuclear weapons, and it has become a threat to the world and the regional stability, right? We all have also understood about Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which was to check the nuclear stockpile of Iran. It came in the year 2015. However, in 2018, United States came out from it, right? Because Iran was not stopping its nuclear stockpile, and therefore Donald Trump in 2018 withdraw his support from JCPOA. We all know, guys, JCPOA includes the countries like US, all the P5 countries. P5 countries of the United Nations Security Council are United States, UK, Germany, China, and sorry, Germany is not there. Germany cannot be there, right? So it is US, UK, France, China, and Russia. So you have 5 P5 countries as which were the members of JCPOA plus 1, and this 1 means Germany, right? So plus Iran, definitely, because the deliberations and the discussions are with Iran, and plus, very importantly, EU, European Union. Are you getting? So JCPOA as a deal came in the year 2015, and it included P5 plus 1, that means P5 plus Germany plus Iran plus European Union, right? Now, but in 2018, United States withdrew from JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, saying that Iran is not stopping, its nuclear stockpile, and it's still, producing the nuclear energy, which is a threat to the world peace, right? So, but now in Geneva, in Vienna, Austria, the talks are being undergoing, and they want that Iran, they want that JCPOA be revived, right? So, guys, the news is with regard to Iran, and it has stationed a missile, which under which radar you have Israel and some United States bases, right? And the name of the missile, the nuclear missile, very, very important, it is Khyber Buster. And it may be asked in the examination, which among the following is the name of the missile, nuclear missile, being developed by Iran. So it is Khyber Buster, and is called as Khyber Buster, which has a reference to a Jewish castle overrun by Muslim armies in the early days of Islam. So it cites the history of Islam and how some Muslim warriors, overruns a house of a Jewish family, right? A Jewish castle was being overrun, right? The missile has very high accuracy and is manufactured completely domestically and can defeat the missile shield system. Very, very important. So, guys, it can defeat even the missile shield systems. So still Iran is not stopping its moves, and it is still it is building over its nuclear stockpile. Let's see how the Vienna talks goes, and we expect that JCPOA is being revived. I hope it is clear. Moving to the other news in today's newspaper, the governor's role in approving a bill. Now, the context is Tamil Nadu governor R.N. Ravi. Now, he has, returned the bill which was passed by Tamil Nadu Vidhan Sabha or Tamil Nadu State Legislative Assembly, saying that the state, must be given exception from NEET examination for the medical entrance, right? Medical admissions. So R.N. Ravi, the governor, has returned the bill of the state assembly to the state, citing that the state must be given the government and assembly bill, which now this assembly bill seeks an exemption to the state from NEET examination. Now Tamil Nadu Vidhan Sabha passed a bill which actually seeks an exemption from NEET examination, right? So they want that the NEET must not be the mandatory criteria for the entrance into various medical colleges, because they believe that NEET exam requires a coaching, and it also involves a lot of time. A lot of hardships is being involved. So therefore they believe that the seats must be reserved for the state exams, and NEET the state should be given exemption from the NEET exam, right? Now, but because the news came with regard to the governor role in approving a bill, we must understand what is the issue and what are the powers with the governor with regard to any bill coming from the state assembly. Let us see here. Now, veto power of governor. And these veto power, students, are being mentioned under Article 200, right? You possibly would be knowing that the veto powers of the president are being mentioned under Article 1, 2, 3, right? But leave it abhi. We are concerned with the veto powers of the governor. Now, let us understand the issue. Now, when any bill passed from the state legislative assembly, if there is a single house, or if there are two houses, then it has also to be passed by the state legislative council. Any bill which is being passed by the state legislature, it goes to the governor for his assent. Now, governor has some powers with him which can affect the life of the bill. First is definitely he can give his assent or ratification, right? By giving his signature, by giving the signature to the bill, he assents the bill, or he gives his signature or ratifies the bill, and the moment he ratifies the bill, it becomes an act once it is being published into the Gazette of the state, or right. The other option, all right, so I also have to mention about the president, so therefore I'll just take more space here so in order to make you understand better. So let's say again the bill has been passed from the state legislature and it has gone to the governor, right? I'm talking of any bill passed by the state legislature and has gone to the governor for his assent, right? The governor has some options. He can give his assent, so the governor has option either to give his assent, and the moment he gives his assent, the bill becomes an act, correct? I hope it is clear till this. The second option that the governor has to reject the bill, and this is called as absolute veto. Absolute veto, and it results into the end of the bill. But definitely it can be exercised only with the concurrence of the state legislature. The third option that the president has, and it is all going under Article 200. The third option that he has is to return the bill, right? Return the bill, technically also called as to suspend the bill. Now, the governor can suspend a bill coming from the state assembly, except for money bill. So, money bills cannot be suspended by the governor. Why? Because the money bills are being introduced in the state legislature only with the prior recommendation of the governor. Are you getting? So, therefore, he won't return the bill, right? So the returning of the bill or suspending of the bill is for the ordinary bills and not for the money bill, right? And this is called as suspensive veto. Correct. Now when the bill is being suspended, it goes again to the state legislative assembly, and the state legislature, if the state legislature, so when he's returning, he may give some recommendations which the state assembly may accept or reject. In any case, if the bill is being again passed by the state legislative assembly with simple majority, simple majority means majority of present and voting, right? So when the bill which was returned by the governor to the state legislature and being passed by the state legislative assembly with simple majority, right, then the governor is bound to accept it, right? In this sense, we can say that the suspensive veto power of the governor can be overridden by simple majority of the state assembly, right? So I repeat, the suspensive veto of the governor can be overridden by simple majority of the state legislature, right, or state legislative assembly, right? I hope it is clear. Moving ahead, if I talk about one more power that the president has, the governor has. Now my question is, does the governor has the pocket veto power? You all would be knowing about the pocket veto power, means taking no action with regard to the bill, right? That means keeping in the pocket or lying it idle on the table, right? Keeping it idle on the table, correct, without any action being taken. So does the governor has pocket veto power as president? The answer is no, a clear no, right? So the governor cannot exercise pocket veto power with regard to any state legislative bill, right? Now the third power that the fourth power that the governor has to send the bill, for consideration of president. So he can also send the bill, if he feels so, for the consideration of the president, right? Let's say if he is not happy with the bill, he has neither rejected, he's used as his absolute veto, nor he has suspended the bill, right? And he has also not given his assent, right? And he has reserved the bill for the consideration of the president, right? Now in this case, the bill would go to the president, and the president also has some options with regard to the same. He can give his assent. The moment he gives his assent, it becomes an act. He can reject it. Yes, he can very much reject it. It is called as absolute veto, and it results into the end of the bill. Can he return the bill again? Yes, very much he can return the bill to the state legislative assembly, and in this case the returned bill, the state legislative assembly has to respond or has to send the bill again to the president within 6 months. Number one. Number two, if the state legislative assembly tries to override the suspensive veto, because it is again suspensive veto, right, returning the bill. So if the state legislative assembly tries to pass the bill again with simple majority, then it cannot do so, because the suspensive veto of president with respect to the state assembly bills cannot be overridden, by state legislative assembly, right? So that means once the bill is being sent by the president for the consideration by the state legislative assembly, they have to pass it. They are bound to pass it. In fact, they are bound to pass it within 6 months, right? It is mandatory for them. It is not that they can override the suspensive veto power of the president by passing it again with simple majority, right? As in this case, you can see that the suspensive veto power of the governor can be overridden by simple majority of the Vidhan Sabha, and the president and the governor is bound to accept this, right? So the reconsidered bill coming from the state legislature is binding on the governor, right? But such is not the case for president. I mean, any bill which is being sent by the governor, cannot be overridden by the state legislature by simple majority. Are you getting? So these two exceptions are there, right? And when president takes any action with regard to the bill of the state legislature, he can do so only under Article 201. Very, very important, guys. So don't get confused between Article 200 and Article 201, right? So 200 are the veto powers of the governor, and 201 talks about the presidential veto powers with respect to any state bill, right? I'm not saying that it is the veto powers of the president. Veto powers of the president are mentioned under a different article, Article 111, right? Article 111 talks about the veto powers. So initially I mentioned it is 123. No, 123 is for the ordinance. Article 111 talks about the veto powers of the president, right? President. So it is not 111. Article 201 talks about the veto power of the president with regard to any bill coming from the state legislature which is being reserved to him by the governor of the state, right? So he can definitely assent the bill, he can reject the bill, he can return the bill, and the state legislature has to pass it within 6 months. Can he use the pocket veto with regard to the state bills? Very much, right? Very much. So the president can use the pocket veto with regard to the state bills. He can, so he has these many powers with regard to the any bill coming from the state assembly, correct? So he can give the assent, he can reject his assent, he can return, and he can also exercise the pocket veto power, right? So Article 200 for the governor's veto power, 201 for the veto power of the president when for the bill which is being reserved to him by the governor. I'm talking about the state bill, right? So these are the veto powers of the governor that we discussed in today's class. I hope it is very, very clear, guys, and I expect that you take a copy of this explanation, right? It would be really very, very helpful for you to understand, and it would clarify your concepts with regard to the veto powers. Very, very important. You can take the screenshot of the same. You can revise it by rewinding the video. Very, very important, and I've explained everything in crisp and clear manner, right? So moving ahead, right? So this article which talks about the governor's power we have discussed, and I hope you enjoyed the session today, guys, and we had a discussion over many issues today, and that's all for today. I'll see you in the next class with news analysis of tomorrow. That's all for the day. Good day, goodbye.